The sound of laughter echoed through what I thought was my empty house. Strange laughter, foreign voices. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stood frozen on my own doorstep, key trembling in my weathered hand. After 3 weeks visiting my sister in Florida, this was not the homecoming I had imagined. Through my living room window, I could see shadows moving. Strangers lounging on my furniture, drinking from my china cups, treating my sanctuary like their own personal playground. My name is Judith Parsons. I'm 66 years old, and I've called Tucson, Arizona home for over 4 decades. This house on Sunset Ridge Drive wasn't just 4 walls and a roof. It was my fortress, my legacy, the culmination of 37 years of mortgage payments and countless hours of love poured into every corner. I had scraped together $340,000 over the years, working double shifts as a nurse while raising my son Kevin as a single mother after his father abandoned us when Kevin was just 8 years old. The desert heat felt different that September afternoon, heavier, more oppressive. As I fumbled with my luggage, my phone buzzed with a call from Kevin, my 40-year-old son, the boy I had sacrificed everything for, the man I had put through college by working overtime shifts that left my feet bleeding in my nursing shoes. "Mom!" Kevin's voice carried an unusual cheerfulness that immediately set my teeth on edge. "Welcome home. How was your trip with Aunt Margaret?" "Kevin, there are people in my house. Strangers. What's going on?" My voice cracked despite my efforts to remain calm. A pause. Then, like a knife sliding between my ribs. "Mom, we sold your house. You're going to live in a nursing home now. It's for the best. You're getting older, and we think you need proper care." The phone nearly slipped from my grasp. The Arizona sun blazed overhead, but I felt ice flooding my veins. "We?" I whispered. "Sarah and I. We've been talking, and with the market being so good right now, we got $480,000 for it. That's way more than you paid. We already found you a nice place, Sunset Manor. It's got everything you need, and you'll make new friends your own age." Sarah, his wife of 3 years, the woman who smiled sweetly to my face while whispering poison in my son's ear behind my back. The woman who had been pushing Kevin to put me in a home since their wedding day, claiming I was too much responsibility for their new marriage. "Kevin Michael Parsons," I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake in my chest. "You sold my house? The house I bought with my money? The house I've been paying taxes on for decades? Mom, don't be dramatic. We had power of attorney papers drawn up while you were gone. Dr. Martinez signed off that you might be developing memory issues. You did forget your appointment last month, remember? We're just looking out for you." Memory issues. The appointment I had missed because I was at the hospital with my dear friend Eleanor, holding her hand as she took her last breath. The appointment Kevin knew about because I had called him, crying, asking for support during one of the hardest days of my life. Standing there on my own driveway, suitcase in hand, watching strangers rifle through my belongings like scavengers, something crystalline and sharp formed in my chest. Not heartbreak. Heartbreak was soft, sad, defeated. This was fury. Pure, righteous, steel-spined fury. "Where are my belongings, Kevin?" "We packed them up. They're in storage. Don't worry, Mom. Everything important is safe." Important to whom? The photo albums documenting Kevin's entire childhood? My grandmother's china that survived the Depression? The quilt my mother made with her arthritic hands during her final years? "I'll call you later, Kevin. We need to discuss this properly." "Mom, the papers are already signed. The new owners take possession tomorrow. You should head straight to Sunset Manor. I've already paid your first month, room 237. They're expecting you." The line went dead. In the silence that followed, I could hear my own heartbeat and the distant sound of my life being dismantled by strangers who had bought my memories for $480,000. But Kevin had made one critical mistake. He had underestimated his mother. If you're enjoying this story of family betrayal and unexpected justice, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories. Also, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love connecting with viewers from around the world. The storage unit Kevin had mentioned was on the far side of Tucson, a concrete box in a sea of identical concrete boxes, each one holding someone's displaced life. Unit 247 contained my existence, crammed into a 10x10 space like a garage sale waiting to happen. My dining room table, the one where Kevin had done his homework every night for 12 years, was stacked with boxes marked kitchen misc and old clothes in Sarah's precise handwriting. Old clothes. My nursing uniform from Desert General Hospital, where I had worked for 22 years, was apparently just old clothes to her. The dress I wore to Kevin's high school graduation. The sweater I knitted during long winter nights when money was so tight I kept the heat at 60 degrees, all reduced to miscellaneous items worthy of a storage unit. But as I rifled through my dismantled life, I found something Kevin and Sarah had missed. Tucked between photo albums in a box marked junk, my real estate portfolio folder lay forgotten. Inside were deeds, certificates, and investment records that painted a picture my son had never bothered to understand. You see, while Kevin was growing up, I hadn't just been working as a nurse. I had been learning. Every lunch break spent reading real estate magazines instead of gossiping with colleagues. Every weekend spent at open houses, studying market trends, understanding property values. By the time Kevin graduated college, I owned 3 rental properties in addition to my primary residence, generating $2,800 monthly in passive income. My phone rang. Margaret, my sister, calling from Florida. "Judy, honey, you sounded strange when you called yesterday. Is everything okay?" I told her. Everything. The betrayal, the strangers in my house, the storage unit filled with my life's remnants. Margaret listened with growing horror. "That little snake," she hissed. "After everything you did for him. Judy, you remember what Mama used to say?" I did remember. Our mother, God rest her soul, used to tell us, when someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. And when they try to destroy you, don't get mad. Get strategic. Margaret, I need you to do me a favor. Look up the property records for 847 Saguaro Lane in Tucson, Kevin and Sarah's house. While Margaret researched, I made another call. To Robert Chen, the real estate attorney who had helped me with my investment properties over the years. Robert had always been straight with me, never condescending despite my lack of formal education. "Judith, how's retirement treating you?" "Robert, I need to buy a house. Today. And I need to understand exactly how my son managed to sell my property without my explicit consent." The silence on the line stretched for several seconds. "Judith, what's happened?" I explained the situation. Robert's professional composure cracked. "This is elder abuse, Judith. Clear and simple. The power of attorney documentation you're describing, if it exists at all, would need specific conditions met. And Dr. Martinez cleared you for competency just 6 months ago for your insurance update. I have that documentation on file." Meanwhile, Margaret called back with interesting news about 847 Saguaro Lane. Kevin and Sarah had purchased their dream house 8 months ago for $395,000, putting down only 3%, roughly $12,000. Their monthly mortgage payment was $2,947, nearly identical to Kevin's take-home pay as a mid-level insurance adjuster. They were house poor, living paycheck to paycheck in their McMansion. "Robert," I said, pieces clicking together in my mind, "what would happen if someone made a cash offer on that Saguaro Lane property today, significantly above asking price?" "Well, if the homeowners are financially distressed, which it sounds like they might be, they'd be foolish not to consider it, especially if they're behind on payments." Margaret had more information. "Judy, I also checked the public records. They missed their last 2 mortgage payments. The bank sent a notice of intent to foreclose last week, so that was it. Kevin and Sarah weren't just greedy, they were desperate. My house sale wasn't about my welfare, it was about saving their own financial necks. They had leveraged my love, my trust, and my temporary absence to solve their money problems. But 2 could play the real estate game, and I had been playing it much longer than they realized. That evening, as I sat in a modest hotel room instead of my own bedroom, I spread out property documents on the polyester bedspread. My real estate portfolio was worth considerably more than Kevin realized. The 3 rental properties I owned had appreciated significantly over the past decade. Conservative estimates put their combined value at $1.2 million, with $340,000 in equity available for immediate liquidation, more than enough to buy my son's house right out from under him. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting mad. Sometimes it's getting even with compound interest. The next morning brought clarity and rage in equal measure. I met Robert Chen at his office at 8 a.m. sharp, my folder of documents clutched against my chest like armor. The power of attorney papers Kevin had mentioned turned out to be as fictional as his concern for my welfare. "Judith, I've reviewed everything twice," Robert said, his kind eyes reflecting my own anger. "There is no valid power of attorney on file anywhere. What your son did constitutes fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. The sale of your house is completely invalid." But here's where Kevin had been clever, in his small-minded way. The buyers of my house weren't some faceless corporation. They were the Hendersons, a young couple with 2 toddlers who had been saving for years for their dream home. Jim Henderson was a veteran, recently returned from deployment. His wife Maria was a kindergarten teacher. They had used every penny of their savings, plus a VA loan, to purchase what they believed was legitimately for sale. "If we reverse this sale immediately," Robert explained, "the Hendersons lose their down payment, their loan approval, and probably their chance at home ownership for years. They're innocent victims of your son's deception." My heart ached for them, but my resolve didn't waver. What are my options? We can pursue criminal charges against Kevin and Sarah. The forged documents alone carry a potential sentence of 2 to 5 years. The elder abuse charges could add another 3 to 7 years. Financially, we can sue for damages, which would likely include the full value of your house plus punitive damages, probably around $750,000 total. $750,000. More money than Kevin would earn in 15 years. But money wasn't what I wanted. Justice was more expensive than that. "Robert, what if we let the Henderson family keep my house? What if we make Kevin and Sarah pay the real price instead?" That afternoon, I drove to 847 Saguaro Lane. Kevin and Sarah's neighborhood was one of those cookie-cutter developments where every house looked like it had been stamped out by the same machine, differentiated only by minor variations in paint color and landscaping. Their house sat on a corner lot, impressive from the street with its 2-story facade and 3-car garage. I parked across the street and called my bank. "Mrs. Parsons, you're looking to liquidate how much from your investment portfolio?" The loan officer sounded surprised. $450,000. Cash, today." "Ma'am, that's a substantial amount. Might I ask what this is for?" "I'm buying my son a lesson in consequences." While the bank processed my request, I researched everything about Kevin and Sarah's financial situation. Social media made it easy. Sarah posted constantly about their lifestyle. Designer handbags, expensive restaurant meals, weekend trips to Scottsdale resorts, all of it funded by credit cards and a mortgage they clearly couldn't afford. Kevin's insurance adjuster salary topped out at around $52,000 annually. Sarah worked part-time as a dental hygienist, earning maybe $24,000 per year. Together, they were bringing home roughly $4,800 monthly, but spending like they earned twice that amount. Their mortgage payment was $2,147. Add in property taxes, insurance, HOA fees, and utilities, and their housing costs alone exceeded $3,400 monthly. That left them with $1,400 to cover food, gas, credit card payments, car payments, and Sarah's shopping addiction. No wonder they were facing foreclosure. At 3 p.m., Robert called with an update. "Judith, I've spoken with the foreclosure attorney handling the Saguaro Lane property. The bank is absolutely willing to accept a cash offer above the outstanding mortgage balance. Kevin and Sarah owe $387,000. If you offer $450,000, the bank keeps $387,000, and Kevin and Sarah walk away with $63,000. And then what happens to them? They'll need to find somewhere else to live, immediately. The new owner, which would be you, could evict them for any reason or no reason, as long as proper notice is given." Perfect. Kevin wanted to put his mother in a nursing home? Let's see how he enjoyed sudden homelessness. But first, I needed to know exactly how deep their deception went. I called Dr. Martinez's office, the physician Kevin claimed had signed off on my memory issues. "Mrs. Parsons, how lovely to hear from you. How was your visit with your sister?" "Dr. Martinez, I need to ask you something important. Did you ever sign any documents stating that I have memory problems or am incompetent to handle my own affairs?" A long pause. "Absolutely not, Judith. Your last cognitive assessment 6 months ago showed you're sharp as a tack. Why would you ask such a thing?" "Because my son told someone you did." Dr. Martinez's voice turned cold. "Mrs. Parsons, if your son is claiming I signed documents I never signed, that's medical fraud. That's a felony. I'll need to report this to the medical board and potentially law enforcement. Doctor, let me handle this my way first, but I may need you to testify to my mental competency. Anytime, Judith. Anytime. By evening, I had everything in place. The cash was available. The foreclosure attorney was ready. Robert had prepared all necessary paperwork. Tomorrow, I would purchase my son's house and become his landlord. But tonight, I made one more call. To Kevin. Hi, Mom. How's the nursing home? I know it's an adjustment, but you'll love it once you settle in. Kevin, I said, my voice steady as steel. I'm calling to let you know that tomorrow morning, I'm buying your house. Silence, then nervous laughter. Mom, what are you talking about? Our house isn't for sale. It will be. Foreclosure auction, 9 a.m. I'll be the highest bidder. The laughter died. Mom, you're confused. You can't just buy someone's house. Watch me. And I hung up. My phone started ringing at 6:47 a.m. Kevin, calling in a panic. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 6:52, 6:58, 7:03, and 7:09. Each voicemail message grew more frantic, more desperate, more revealing of who he really was beneath the veneer of concerned son. Mom, please answer. We need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding. Mom, this is crazy. You can't do this to us. We're family. Mom, Sarah's crying. You're destroying our lives. How can you be so cruel? Mom, I'm sorry about the house thing, okay? Maybe we can work something out. Call me back. Cruel. I was being cruel. The irony was so thick I could taste it. At 8:30 a.m., I met Robert at the courthouse steps. The foreclosure auction was a sterile affair. A handful of real estate investors, a bank representative, and an auctioneer who treated million-dollar properties like used car sales. 847 Saguaro Lane was the third property on the docket. Current outstanding balance is $387,000, the auctioneer announced. Do I hear an opening bid? A local investor opened at $390,000. Another countered with $395,000. Standard procedure. Most foreclosure auctions ended with bids just slightly above the mortgage balance, ensuring the bank recovered their money while leaving the original owners with little to nothing. $450,000, I called out clearly. Silence. Heads turned. The other investors exchanged glances, recognizing that someone was bidding with emotion rather than economics. Smart money doesn't overbid at foreclosure auctions. Going once, going twice, sold to bidder number 47 for $450,000. Just like that, I owned my son's house. Robert handed me the keys at 10:15 a.m. Heavy brass keys to a life Kevin and Sarah had built on borrowed money and stolen inheritance. I drove to Saguaro Lane, parked in what used to be Kevin's driveway, and walked up to what used to be Kevin's front door. Sarah answered on the second knock. Her face was swollen from crying. Her usually perfect makeup streaked and ruined. Behind her, I could see Kevin pacing like a caged animal, his phone pressed to his ear. Judith, Sarah whispered, please, we can explain everything. I'm sure you can. May I come in? To my house? Her face crumpled. We didn't mean for it to happen like this. We were just so scared about losing the house, and when you went to Florida, Kevin thought maybe we could borrow against your house value, just temporarily, until we got caught up on payments. Borrow. Such a gentle word for theft. Kevin appeared behind her, his face flushed with anger and desperation. Mom, this is insane. You can't just destroy your own family over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I stepped inside, looking around at the home they had furnished with debt. Everything was expensive, tasteful, and temporary. The kind of lifestyle that looks impressive on social media but crumbles under financial pressure. Help me understand, Kevin. Which part was the misunderstanding? Forging power of attorney documents? Claiming Dr. Martinez declared me incompetent? Selling my house without my knowledge or consent? Having me committed to a nursing home against my will? We never had you committed. We just thought. You thought what? That I was too old and stupid to notice? That I'd just accept being institutionalized so you could steal my life's work to pay for your granite countertops and designer handbags? Sarah was sobbing now, clutching Kevin's arm. We'll pay you back, every penny, with interest. Just please don't kick us out. This is our home. Our home. Built with money they didn't have, furnished with credit they couldn't service, stolen from a mother who had sacrificed everything for an ungrateful son. Sarah, I said gently, this was never your home. This was always the bank's home, and you were just renting it until you couldn't make payments anymore. The only difference now is that you're renting from me instead." Kevin's face darkened. "So what? You're our landlord now? What do you want? Monthly humiliation? Is that it?" I had prepared for this moment, rehearsed it in my hotel room the night before. But seeing Kevin's face, the face I had kissed better after playground falls, the face I had proudly watched walk across his college graduation stage, twisted with anger and entitlement rather than shame, I felt something cold and final settle in my chest. "What I want, Kevin, is for you to understand what you've done. You didn't just steal my house, you stole my trust. You didn't just forge documents, you tried to erase my autonomy. You didn't just lie to me, you convinced yourself I deserved it." I pulled out the rental agreement Robert had prepared. "Your new monthly rent is $3,200. First month's rent, last month's rent, and security deposit due immediately. That's $9,600, cash or certified check." Sarah gasped. "We don't have $9,000. That's impossible." "Then I suppose you'll need to find somewhere else to live." Kevin stepped forward, his voice turning ugly. "You can't do this to us. We'll fight this. We'll contest the foreclosure. You'll what, Kevin? Hire a lawyer with money you don't have to fight a legal sale conducted by the bank that holds your mortgage? File fraud charges against your own mother for buying property at a public auction?" The fight went out of him then. Reality settled over his face like a heavy blanket. He sank onto his expensive couch, probably still being financed at 29% interest, and buried his face in his hands. "Mom, I'm sorry. I know we messed up, but please, we're desperate. Sarah lost her job last month. I'm barely keeping us afloat. When the foreclosure notice came, we panicked. Sarah lost her job." Another detail Kevin had conveniently omitted during his cheerful phone call about my new nursing home arrangements. Their financial situation was even worse than I had realized. "Kevin," I said, settling into the chair across from him, "do you remember what I taught you when you were 8 years old? When you stole that candy bar from Mr. Peterson's store?" He looked up, confusion replacing anger. "You made me return it and apologize. And what did I tell you about consequences? That they're how we learn what matters. Your father abandoned us when you were 8 years old, Kevin. He left because responsibility was too hard, because keeping promises was inconvenient, because other people's needs got in the way of what he wanted. I promised myself I would never let you become that kind of man." I stood up, walked to the window overlooking their manicured front yard. "I failed. Mom, please. The rental agreement stands. You have 30 days to come up with the deposit and first month's rent, or you need to vacate the property. Those are your options." But as I walked toward the door, I turned back one more time. "Kevin, there is a third option." Hope flickered in Kevin's eyes like a candle in a storm. "What's the third option?" "You fix this, all of it." Sarah stopped crying. Kevin sat up straighter. For a moment, they looked like the children they still were in so many ways. Children who had never learned that actions have consequences, that other people's pain matters, that love isn't a bank account you can withdraw from indefinitely without making deposits. "First," I continued, "you're going to contact the Henderson family. You're going to explain exactly what you did, the fraud, the forged documents, the lies. You're going to apologize for the mess you've created in their lives." "Mom, that's—" "Second, you're going to work with Robert Chen to establish a proper transfer of my house back to me, and then I'm going to decide whether to sell it to the Hendersons at cost or work out a payment plan that doesn't destroy their financial future." Kevin's face went pale. "But what about the money we already got?" "It's gone, Mom. We used it to catch up on our mortgage payments and credit cards. Which brings me to the third requirement. You're going to get second jobs. Both of you. You're going to create a payment plan to reimburse me every single penny of the $480,000 you stole, plus interest, plus legal fees." Sarah made a choking sound. "That's impossible. At our income level, that would take 20 years to pay back. Then you'd better hope you live that long." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, Kevin spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "And if we do all that? If we somehow manage to pay you back over 20 years, apologize to the Hendersons, fix all the legal mess we created, then what? Then maybe, Kevin, you'll have learned what it means to be the kind of man I tried to raise. Maybe you'll understand that family isn't something you use. It's something you protect." I walked toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Kevin? The fourth requirement is that you're going to call Dr. Martinez and explain to him why you lied about documents he never signed. Elder abuse is a felony. Medical fraud is a felony. You're going to make this right with him, or I'll let the police sort it out. That evening, I sat in my hotel room reviewing financial statements when my phone rang. Robert Chen. Judith, I've had an interesting conversation with young Kevin. He's asking about plea arrangements and payment plans. I think your message got through. Good. What are his options, realistically? Well, if he's serious about making restitution, we can structure a formal agreement. Based on their current income, assuming they both get second jobs, they could realistically pay back about $2,000 monthly. That would put full restitution at around 18 years. 18 years. Kevin was 40 now. He'd be 58 when he finished paying for his betrayal, the same age I had been when I finished paying off my mortgage. Robert, what about criminal charges? That's your choice, Judith. The district attorney's office is very interested in this case. Elder abuse cases are often difficult to prosecute because the victims are afraid to testify against family members. You'd be helping set a precedent. Criminal charges, prison time. Kevin's life destroyed in a different way. I thought about my mother, about the lessons she had tried to teach us about justice versus revenge. Justice was about making things right. Revenge was about making people hurt. Let's give him 30 days to demonstrate good faith, I decided. If he follows through on everything, the apologies, the job search, the legal cleanup, then we'll consider a civil resolution. If he doesn't, then we let the justice system handle it. 2 days later, Kevin called me. Not Sarah this time. Kevin himself. Mom, I got a second job. Night security at a warehouse. Sarah's interviewing for weekend shifts at 2 different dental offices. That's a start. I also called Dr. Martinez. I told him what I did. What we did. He's furious, but he said he won't press charges if we get everything straightened out legally. And the Hendersons? A long pause. That's the hardest part, Mom. They're good people. Really good people. Jim showed me pictures of his kids, told me about how they'd been saving for years for a house. Maria makes quilts for premature babies at the hospital. They're exactly the kind of people who shouldn't get hurt by our stupidity. Our stupidity. Not the situation or the misunderstanding. Stupidity. I'm meeting with them tomorrow, Kevin continued. Robert's going to be there too. We're going to figure out how to fix this without destroying their dream. Kevin? Yeah, Mom? This is what taking responsibility looks like. I'm proud of you for taking this step. Silence. Then quietly. I'm not proud of me, Mom. I can't believe what we did to you. I can't believe I became the kind of person who would do that. For the first time since this nightmare began, I heard my son's voice instead of the stranger who had stolen my house. Kevin, people aren't defined by their worst moment. They're defined by what they do after their worst moment. Show me who you really are. 3 days later, Robert called with an update. The Henderson meeting went well. We've worked out an arrangement where you'll sell them the house for exactly what they paid, $480,000, but they'll make payments directly to you over 15 years at a reduced interest rate. Kevin and Sarah will continue making payments to you as well, essentially serving as co-signers for the Hendersons' mortgage. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't simple, but it was just. What about my house situation? Where am I actually going to live? Well, Robert said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. It turns out the Hendersons have a guest house, a small, 1-bedroom cottage in their backyard. They'd like to offer it to you, rent-free, in exchange for occasional babysitting and the peace of mind that comes with having a retired nurse nearby. A guest house, in the backyard of my own former home, with a family who understood the value of kindness and second chances. Sometimes justice comes with a garden view and the laughter of children. Moving into the Hendersons' guest house felt like stepping into a parallel universe where kindness still existed. The cottage was small but perfect, 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a living room with windows that overlooked Maria Henderson's vegetable garden. Most importantly, it came with neighbors who understood the difference between taking and giving. Jim Henderson helped me move my belongings from the storage unit, refusing my offers to pay him for his time. Mrs. Parsons, he said, hefting my grandmother's cedar chest with careful hands, after what your family put us through, and what you're doing to make it right, helping you move is the least we can do. Maria appeared, with fresh-baked cookies and sweet tea, her 2 toddlers hiding behind her legs, peeking at me with curious eyes. The kids are excited to have a grandma next door, she said with a warm smile. I hope you don't mind noise. Tommy and Lucy can get pretty rowdy in the backyard. Mind noise? After 3 weeks of hotel room silence broken only by my own thoughts and CNN, the sound of children playing was like music. That first evening, as I unpacked my photo albums in my new living room, Kevin called. "Mom, how's the cottage?" "It's lovely. How's the job search going?" "Good. Actually, really good. I start the warehouse job Monday, and Sarah got the weekend position at Dr. Reeves's office. We're also—" He paused, and I could hear something different in his voice, something that might have been humility. "We're also selling some stuff. Sarah's designer handbags, my golf clubs, the motorcycle. We figure we owe you more than we owe our egos." The motorcycle. Kevin had bought that Harley Davidson 2 years ago for $18,000, financed at 12% interest. I had bitten my tongue at the time, knowing that a man drowning in debt had no business buying toys. But Kevin had been so proud of it, posting pictures on social media of weekend rides through the desert. "Kevin, you don't have to sell everything you love." "Mom, I'm learning the difference between things I love and things I want. Turns out most of what I thought I loved was just expensive stuff that made me feel important." A week later, my new routine began to take shape. Mornings in Maria's garden, teaching her about desert plants and helping harvest tomatoes. Afternoons reading on my small patio, often with Tommy and Lucy playing nearby. Evenings watching the sunset paint the Santa Catalina Mountains in shades of gold and purple. Kevin and Sarah came by every Sunday for dinner. Awkward at first, these visits slowly evolved into something resembling family meals. Sarah had lost 15 pounds from stress and was quieter than before, but she was also more genuine. The desperate, grasping quality that had always made me uncomfortable around her was gone, replaced by something that looked like actual remorse. "Judith," she said one evening as we cleaned dishes together, "I need to apologize, not just for the house thing, but for before. I always saw you as competition for Kevin's attention instead of as his mother. I was jealous of how much he loved you, so I tried to turn him against you." I handed her a dish towel. "Sarah, why?" "Because my own mother died when I was 12. I guess I thought there was only so much love to go around, and if Kevin loved you, there wouldn't be enough left for me." Understanding bloomed between us, like a flower opening to sunlight. Grief, fear, and insecurity had driven her behavior, not pure greed. It didn't excuse what she had done, but it made it human. "Sarah, love isn't pie. There's not less for you because Kevin loves me. There's just more love in the world." Meanwhile, the payment plan was working. Kevin's paychecks from his regular job covered their basic living expenses, while his warehouse earnings went directly to me. Sarah's weekend job added another $400 monthly to the restitution fund. They were living like college students. Cheap groceries, no cable TV, clothes from thrift stores. But they were living within their means for the first time in their marriage. More importantly, they were working together. Sarah packed Kevin's lunches for his double shifts. Kevin took over household chores so Sarah could pick up extra hours. Instead of the resentful roommates they had been, fighting over money and blame, they were becoming partners in rebuilding. But the real change was in Kevin himself. The entitled man-child who had sold my house was gone, replaced by someone who looked tired but determined. Someone who called me not because he needed something, but because he wanted to know how I was doing. "Mom, tell me about when I was little, about how you managed everything by yourself." We were sitting on my cottage patio, watching the kids play in the sprinkler, while Maria and Jim prepared dinner inside. The evening air smelled like barbecue smoke and desert sage. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I'm realizing I never understood. You worked 12-hour shifts, came home and helped me with homework, made dinner, did laundry, paid bills, maintained the house, and I just thought that was normal. I thought that was easy." I remembered those years, bone-deep exhaustion that never quite went away, falling asleep in the hospital break room during lunch, choosing between buying Kevin new shoes or paying the electric bill on time. "It wasn't easy, Kevin, but it was worth it, or at least I thought it was." He winced. "Mom, I know I disappointed you. I know I became everything you tried to prevent." "No," I said firmly. "You became something I tried to prevent. But you're changing. That's what matters." 3 months into our arrangement, Robert called with news. "Judith, I've been reviewing Kevin and Sarah's financial records. They're actually ahead of schedule on payments. Between the overtime and the items they've sold, they've paid back $8,400 already. $8,400 out of $480,000. At this rate, full restitution would take 12 years instead of 18. Still a lifetime, but progress nonetheless. There's something else, Robert continued. Kevin has asked me to look into whether there are legal ways to accelerate the process. He's considering selling the house entirely and moving into something smaller. Selling the house, the beautiful, expensive symbol of everything they couldn't afford. The house that had nearly destroyed our family. What did you tell him? I told him that was his decision to make, but that the rental agreement we have gives you considerable control over such decisions. If he wants to sell, you'd need to approve the buyer and the terms. That evening, Kevin brought up the idea himself. Mom, what if we sold the house, used the equity to pay you back faster? Where would you live? There's a nice apartment complex about 10 minutes from here. 2 bedrooms, $200 a month. We could afford that on just my regular salary and use Sarah's income plus the house sale proceeds to pay you back in maybe 4 years instead of 15. 4 years. Still a long time, but manageable. More importantly, it would mean Kevin and Sarah living within their means, building a life based on what they could actually afford rather than what they aspired to. Have you talked to Sarah about this? It was her idea, Sarah's idea. The woman who had once cared more about appearances than stability, now willing to give up her dream house for the chance to rebuild trust. Kevin, if this is what you both want, I think it's a wise decision. Thanks, Mom, for everything. For giving us a chance to make this right instead of just destroying us. I looked across the yard at Jim Henderson, pushing Tommy on the swing set while Lucy played in her sandbox, at Maria hanging laundry that smelled like sunshine and fabric softener, at the life they had built through honest work and genuine love. Kevin, destroying you would have been easy. Building something better takes time. Change, real change, doesn't happen overnight. But sitting there on my cottage patio, watching my son take responsibility for his mistakes while children laughed in the background, I could see the foundation of something stronger than what we had lost. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to a family is losing everything that wasn't real to begin with. 6 months into our arrangement, I thought I understood the full scope of Kevin and Sarah's deception. I was wrong. The truth, when it finally surfaced, was far more complex than simple financial desperation. It started with a phone call from Dr. Martinez on a Tuesday morning while I was helping Maria hang laundry. Judith, I need to see you in my office today. It's about Kevin and the documents he mentioned. I've discovered something troubling. An hour later, I sat across from Dr. Martinez's desk while he pulled out a thick file folder. Judith, when Kevin called to apologize about the power of attorney documents, I decided to review all recent paperwork involving your file. What I found concerns me greatly. He opened the folder to reveal medical forms I had never seen before. 3 months before your Florida trip, someone submitted a request for cognitive assessment documentation. The paperwork claims to be from you, requesting verification of mental decline for insurance purposes. I stared at the forms. The handwriting looked like mine, but something was off. The signature was close, but the letter formations were slightly different. Someone had been practicing my handwriting. Doctor, I never submitted any such request. I know, which means someone forged these documents and submitted them to my office, hoping to create a paper trail supporting claims of cognitive decline. The implications hit me like ice water. This wasn't a desperate, last-minute plan. Someone was preparing for this months in advance. There's more. Dr. Martinez pulled out another document. Someone also called my office 2 weeks before your trip, claiming to be your daughter-in-law, asking detailed questions about early-stage dementia symptoms and what documentation would be required for power of attorney proceedings. Sarah. Sarah had been planning this for months, creating a framework to justify stealing my house long before they received the foreclosure notice. That evening, I confronted Kevin and Sarah during our usual Sunday dinner. I laid the forged medical forms on their dining room table like evidence in a courtroom. One of you is going to explain these to me, right now. Kevin picked up the forms, his face going pale as he read. Mom, I've never seen these before. I swear to you. I did it. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Kevin didn't know. The silence that followed was deafening. Kevin stared at his wife as if seeing a stranger. Sarah, what are you talking about? The medical forms, the phone calls, the research into power of attorney requirements. I did all of it. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice remained steady. Kevin, you didn't know because I never told you. When we got the foreclosure notice, I already had a plan. Kevin's voice cracked. How long, Sarah? How long have you been planning to steal from my mother? 6 months, maybe 7. I started researching elder law after your birthday party, when Judith mentioned she had updated her will. My birthday party. 8 months ago, when Kevin had surprised me with a small celebration. I had mentioned, casually, that I had worked with Robert Chen to update my estate planning documents. I remembered Sarah asking detailed questions about the process, about how inheritance works, about what happens to property when people become incompetent. She had been gathering intelligence for her theft while smiling at me over birthday cake. Sarah, I said, my voice deadly calm, explain to me exactly what you planned. She wiped her eyes, but continued. I thought, if we could establish that you were developing dementia, we could get power of attorney and then take out a home equity loan against your house, just enough to catch up on our mortgage payments. I never intended to sell your house completely. That was Kevin's idea after the paperwork was already in place. Kevin stood up abruptly, knocking his chair backward. My idea? Sarah, you told me the power of attorney was legitimate. You showed me documents that you said proved Mom was incompetent. I know. I'm sorry. I was so scared of losing everything. So you decided to destroy everything instead? Kevin's voice rose to a shout. Do you understand what you've done? Do you understand that this isn't just fraud? It's calculated, premeditated elder abuse? I looked between them. Kevin, genuinely shocked and horrified at the scope of his wife's deception. And Sarah, finally revealing the depth of her betrayal. For months I had been working with them to rebuild trust, to create a payment plan, to restore our family. All while Sarah harbored the secret that this hadn't been a desperate mistake, but a carefully planned crime. Kevin, I said quietly, I need you to leave the room. Sarah and I need to talk privately. After Kevin left, I sat across from Sarah, studying her face. The tearful, remorseful woman I had been building a relationship with was just another performance. Sarah, I want you to understand something very clearly. I have been giving you the benefit of the doubt for 6 months. I have been treating this as a mistake born of desperation rather than a calculated crime. You have been lying to me this entire time. Judith, please, I'm not finished. My voice carried the steel of a woman who had worked nights in emergency rooms, who had made life and death decisions under pressure, who had raised a child alone while men twice my size tried to dismiss my authority. You researched my medical records. You forged legal documents. You practiced my handwriting. You called my doctor's office under false pretenses. You spent months planning to steal my home and have me declared incompetent. You meant exactly what happened. The only thing you didn't plan for was getting caught. Sarah's composure cracked completely. I was desperate. Do you know what it's like to watch your life fall apart piece by piece? To see your husband work himself to death while you lose everything anyway? Yes, I said simply. I do know what that's like. I lived that life for 18 years after Kevin's father left us. The difference is, I didn't steal from elderly family members to solve my problems. Kevin returned to the room, his face grim. Mom, I've been thinking about the timeline, about what Sarah knew and when, about why she had answers to questions I didn't even know I should ask. Kevin, no, Sarah, no more lies. He sat down heavily. Mom, I need you to know that I genuinely believe the power of attorney was legitimate. Sarah showed me what looked like official documents. She said you had asked her to handle things while you were in Florida because you were worried about your memory. I believed him. The Kevin who had called me in Florida had sounded cheerfully confident, not guilty or deceptive. He had been a fool, but not a criminal. What do you want to do, Kevin? He looked at Sarah, and something died in his expression. The love, the partnership, the shared struggle of the past 6 months, all of it crumbled under the weight of premeditated betrayal. I want a divorce, Sarah gasped. Kevin, no, we can work through this. We've been getting better. We've been built on another lie, Sarah. All of it. The apologies, the working together, the payment plan. It was all based on me believing this was something we did together out of desperation. But you've been playing a different game the entire time. I stood up. I'm calling Robert, and then I'm calling the police. Mom, wait. Kevin grabbed my arm gently. Before you do that, I need to know something. Sarah, is there anything else? Any other lies? Any other schemes? Anything else you haven't told us? Sarah looked between us. calculating even now, trying to determine how much truth she could afford. "Sarah," I said, "this is your only chance to be completely honest. After tonight, everything you haven't confessed will come out through lawyers and investigators. Choose carefully." She took a shaky breath. "There's one more thing. I may have taken some jewelry from your house before it was sold. Your mother's ring, some earrings. I was going to sell them, but then when everything got complicated, I just kept them. My mother's wedding ring. The simple gold band she had worn for 47 years. The one I had planned to pass down to Kevin for his wife. Hidden away like common theft. Where is it? Safety deposit box at Wells Fargo." Kevin stood up. "I'll get it, all of it. And then, Sarah, I want you out of my house tonight. Kevin, please. You stole from my mother. You lied to me. You manipulated me into destroying the most important relationship in my life. You are not the woman I married, and I will not be the man who enables you to hurt people I love." 3 hours later, I sat in my cottage with my mother's ring safely back on my finger, watching police cars pull away from Kevin's house. Sarah had been arrested for elder abuse, fraud, and theft. Kevin sat across from me, looking older than his 40 years. "Mom, I'm so sorry. Not just for what I did, but for not seeing what she was, for being so stupid that I let her use me to hurt you. Kevin, people aren't always who we think they are. Even people we love. What happens now?" I looked at my mother's ring, thinking about the woman who had worn it through depression and war, through raising children and burying dreams, through staying married to a man who wasn't perfect, but who was honest. Now we rebuild. Again. But this time, we build it on truth. The divorce proceedings moved swiftly once Kevin discovered the extent of Sarah's deception. Her arrest made the local news. Local woman arrested for elder abuse scheme. And suddenly, our family crisis became public knowledge. The shame Kevin felt was crushing, but it was also clarifying. "Mom," he said one evening as we sat on my cottage patio, "I keep thinking about Dad, about how he left when things got hard. What about him? I always hated him for running away. But I did the same thing, didn't I? When Sarah told me we could solve our problems by taking your house, I didn't ask hard questions. I just went along with it because it was easier than facing our real problems." Kevin had lost 30 pounds since Sarah's arrest. The stress, combined with his grueling work schedule, had left him gaunt and hollow-eyed. But there was something different in his posture, a straightness that hadn't been there before. Responsibility, even when it hurts, has a way of building strength. "Kevin, the difference between you and your father is that you're still here. You're facing the consequences instead of running from them. Some days I want to run, but you don't. That's what matters." The financial restitution continued, but now Kevin was paying a loan. His wages covered basic living expenses. He had moved into a studio apartment after selling the house, and every extra dollar went toward paying me back. Without Sarah's income, and with legal fees piling up, the timeline stretched out again. At his current pace, full restitution would take nearly 20 years, but Kevin had a plan. "Mom, I've been talking to Robert about other options. What if I signed over my portion of Dad's life insurance policy? He left me as beneficiary on a $50,000 policy. I never claimed it, because I was angry at him for leaving us." The irony was striking. The father who had abandoned us might help fix the damage caused by his abandonment's legacy. "Kevin, that money could be your emergency fund, your future security." "Mom, I stole your security. I stole your future. I don't deserve emergency funds until I've made this right." 3 weeks later, Robert called with an update. "Judith, the insurance payout came through. Combined with what Kevin has already paid, that brings his total restitution to $63,000. At his current payment rate, he'll have everything paid off in approximately 11 years. 11 years. Kevin would be 51 when he finished paying for Sarah's crime and his complicity. Still a lifetime, but manageable. More importantly, Kevin was changing in ways that had nothing to do with money. He had started attending financial literacy classes at the community college, learning about budgets and investments and responsible debt management, all the things he should have learned before buying a house he couldn't afford. He had also started volunteering at a local senior center, helping elderly residents with basic tasks like grocery shopping and bill paying. The irony wasn't lost on him. The man who had tried to institutionalize his own mother was now helping other seniors maintain their independence. "It's penance," he explained when I asked about the volunteer work. Every time I help Mrs. Rodriguez balance her checkbook or drive Mr. Martinez to his doctor's appointment, I think about how easily they could be taken advantage of, how easily I took advantage of you. 6 months after Sarah's arrest, Kevin met someone new. Jennifer was a teacher, divorced with a teenage daughter, practical and kind in ways that Sarah had never been. She knew about Kevin's situation, the divorce, the debt, the reason behind both, and chose to see him anyway. She says she likes that I'm honest about my mistakes, Kevin told me after bringing her to Sunday dinner. She says too many people try to pretend they've never screwed up. Jennifer was different from Sarah in every way that mattered. Where Sarah had been focused on appearances, Jennifer wore clothes from Target and drove a 10-year-old Honda. Where Sarah had encouraged Kevin's spending, Jennifer helped him stick to his strict budget. Where Sarah had seen me as competition, Jennifer asked for my advice about dealing with her teenage daughter. "Mrs. Parsons," she said one evening as we cleaned dishes together, "Kevin talks about you all the time. He says you're the strongest person he knows. I'm just stubborn, dear." "No, it's more than that. He says you could have destroyed him after what he did, but instead you gave him a chance to rebuild. That takes a special kind of strength." I thought about that conversation later, sitting in my garden as the sunset painted the mountains purple and gold. Had I been strong, or had I just been too tired to keep fighting? Had I given Kevin a chance to rebuild, or had I simply chosen the path that hurt least? Maybe strength wasn't about knowing your motivations. Maybe it was just about choosing to build instead of destroy, even when destruction would be easier. The first Christmas after Sarah's arrest was quiet but genuine. Kevin gave me a photo album he had made himself, pictures of us throughout his childhood, with handwritten captions describing memories he had rediscovered while going through old boxes. "I found these in storage," he explained. "Pictures I hadn't looked at in years. I remembered things I had forgotten about how hard you worked, how much you sacrificed. I wanted to make sure we both remembered the good times, not just the bad ones." One picture showed 8-year-old Kevin in a Little League uniform, grinning gap-toothed at the camera while I stood behind him in my nursing scrubs, having rushed from work to make his game. I remembered that day, dead tired from a 12-hour shift, but determined not to miss his moment in the spotlight. "Kevin, do you remember what happened at that game? I struck out, all 3 times at bat. And what did I tell you afterward?" He smiled, the first genuinely happy expression I had seen on his face in months. "You said, 'Kevin, it doesn't matter if you strike out. What matters is that you keep swinging.' That's still true." Another photo showed teenage Kevin at his high school graduation, surrounded by classmates heading off to college while he prepared for community college and part-time work, all we could afford. In the picture, he was smiling, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes, the awareness that his life was going to be harder than his friends' lives, that he was starting from behind and might never catch up. "I was angry about a lot of things back then," Kevin said quietly. "Angry that we didn't have money for a fancy college, angry that I had to work while other kids got to just study, angry that Dad wasn't there to help with any of it. And now? Now I understand that you gave me everything you could, and I understand that the anger I carried about not having enough made me vulnerable to someone like Sarah, someone who promised me shortcuts to the life I thought I deserved." We sat together in comfortable silence, looking through pictures that told the story of a family that had survived abandonment, poverty, and betrayal, and was still choosing to love each other despite everything. "Mom," Kevin said finally, "I know I have 11 more years of payments ahead of me, but I want you to know that I'm grateful for those 11 years. Grateful? Because every payment reminds me of who I want to be instead of who I became. Because every month I get to choose to be the son you deserve instead of the son who disappointed you." Outside, Jennifer's daughter was teaching the Henderson children to play volleyball in the backyard, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. Jim was grilling burgers while Maria set up a picnic table. Normal family sounds, the kind of peaceful evening that I had thought was lost forever. "Kevin," I said, "you're already the son I deserve. The payments are just making it official." 2 years after Sarah's arrest, Kevin made his final payment. Not the scheduled final payment, that wouldn't have come for another 9 years, but the actual final payment, made possible by a promotion at work, careful saving, and a decision to sell his father's vintage car that had been sitting in storage for over a decade. "Mom," he said, handing me the cashier's check for the remaining $127,000. "I know we agreed on a payment plan, but I need this chapter of our lives to be closed. I can't move forward while I still owe you money. The check represented everything Kevin had earned, saved, and sacrificed for 2 years. His studio apartment was sparse but clean, furnished with items from thrift stores and garage sales. His clothes were practical. His car was reliable but old, and his entertainment budget consisted mainly of free activities like hiking and reading library books. Kevin, this money represents your entire savings. What if you have an emergency? Then I'll handle it the way you taught me to handle emergencies, by working harder and spending less, not by stealing from people who love me. Jennifer stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder. She had been part of this journey, supporting Kevin's decision to live like a monk until his debt was paid. Their wedding was planned for the fall, a small ceremony in my cottage garden, followed by a potluck reception with family and close friends. Mrs. Parsons, Jennifer said, I've been thinking about something. Kevin's debt to you is paid, but what about the debt to himself? What about rebuilding the relationship between you two that Sarah's lies damaged? Smart woman. She understood that money was just the beginning of healing. What did you have in mind? I think Kevin should move into the main house with the Hendersons. They've been talking about wanting a live-in handyman, someone who could help with home repairs and yard work in exchange for reduced rent. And I think you should move back into your cottage permanently, not just as a temporary arrangement. The Hendersons had indeed been discussing this possibility. Jim's deployment schedule meant he was away for months at a time, leaving Maria alone with 2 small children and a large house to maintain. Having Kevin nearby would provide security and practical help, while giving him a chance to live in the home he had tried to steal, but this time as a trusted friend and helper rather than an owner. It would be a form of community, Maria had explained earlier. Kevin helping us helping Kevin rebuild his life. You nearby to provide wisdom and babysitting, like an extended family, but one we choose instead of one we're born into. Choose instead of born into. After everything our blood family had been through, the idea of a chosen family felt like a gift. 3 months later, we held Kevin and Jennifer's wedding in the cottage garden. The guest list was small but meaningful. The Hendersons, a few friends from Kevin's volunteer work, Jennifer's daughter and her parents, Robert Chen and his wife, even Dr. Martinez and his family. People who had watched Kevin transform from a man who stole from his mother into a man who spent 2 years working double shifts to make amends. Kevin's wedding vows included a passage that made me cry. Jennifer, I promise to love you with the same honesty I wish I had shown my mother. I promise to build our life on truth instead of on credit. I promise to be the man my mother raised me to be, even when it's harder than being the man I used to be. After the ceremony, as guests enjoyed Maria's homemade cake and Jim's grilled chicken, Kevin pulled me aside. Mom, I have something for you. He handed me a small wooden box. Inside was a key, brass, old-fashioned, heavy in my palm. It's the key to the front door of the main house. The Hendersons and I agreed. You should have access to every part of your original home whenever you want. It's not legally yours anymore, but it's still your house in every way that matters. I looked across the garden at the house I had lost and found again, at the Hendersons, who had turned a real estate disaster into a chosen family, at Jennifer's daughter, who was teaching the Henderson children to play Kevin's old guitar, at Kevin himself, 42 years old and finally growing into the man I had always believed he could be. Kevin, do you know what this reminds me of? What? The story of the phoenix, the bird that burns itself to death and then rises from its own ashes. Are you the phoenix in this story? I smiled, watching Jennifer laugh at something Maria had whispered to her, watching Jim show Kevin how to properly flip burgers on the grill, watching children play in the yard where I had planted my first garden 30 years ago. No, sweetheart, we all are. That evening, after the guests had gone home and the dishes were washed, I sat on my cottage patio with a cup of tea and thought about the journey from betrayal to redemption. Kevin had paid back every penny, but more importantly, he had paid back something more valuable: trust. Sarah was serving 18 months in minimum security prison and would be on probation for 3 years after her release. Her theft had destroyed her marriage, her reputation, and her future, but it had also revealed the strength of the family she had tried to destroy. The Hendersons owned my house, but they had made it a home for all of us. Kevin lived there now, but as a contributing member of a household, rather than as an entitled owner. Jennifer brought wisdom and kindness to our expanded family. Even her daughter, initially skeptical of Kevin's history, had begun calling me Grandma Judy, and asking for advice about boys and schoolwork. My phone rang. Robert Chen, calling with the final paperwork. Judith, it's official. Kevin's debt is satisfied in full, and all liens against the property are cleared. The Henderson family owns the house free and clear, and your cottage is yours for as long as you want it. Robert, thank you for everything, for helping me navigate this mess, for believing that justice was possible even when revenge would have been easier. Judith, I've been practicing law for 30 years. Most family disputes end in destruction. People suing each other, cutting off contact, choosing sides. What you've built here, this healing, this chosen family, it's remarkable. After I hung up, I walked through the garden Maria and I had planted together, past the swing set Jim had built for his children, under the string lights Jennifer had hung for the wedding. Everything looked different in the moonlight, softer and more magical, like a place where second chances could take root and grow. Tomorrow, Kevin would start his new job as a project manager at a construction company, a position that paid well enough to support his new wife and stepdaughter while still allowing him to help the Hendersons with household expenses. Jennifer would begin teaching at a new school, where she had been hired partly because the principal was impressed by her willingness to marry a man who was openly rebuilding his life after serious mistakes. The Henderson children would wake up in the morning, knowing that people who loved them lived in the cottage out back and the apartment upstairs. They would grow up in a house where redemption was possible, where people faced consequences for their actions but weren't defined by their worst moments. And I would wake up in my cottage, in my garden, surrounded by a family I had chosen and who had chosen me back. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes it's building something so beautiful that the people who tried to destroy you realize what they almost missed. 5 years after the betrayal that almost destroyed our family, I received an unexpected visitor. Sarah, released from prison 2 years earlier and working to rebuild her own life, stood at my cottage door with a letter in her hand and tears in her eyes. Judith, she said quietly, I know I have no right to be here. I know you probably never want to see me again, but I have something I need to give you. The letter was handwritten on simple notebook paper, 8 pages of careful script that must have taken hours to compose. In it, Sarah detailed not just her crimes against me, but the deeper damage she had caused to herself and everyone around her. I spent 18 months in prison learning about the psychology of financial abuse, she wrote. I learned that what I did to you wasn't just theft. It was an attempt to steal your autonomy, your dignity, your right to control your own life. I learned that elder abuse is about power, not just money. I used your love for Kevin to manipulate you both, and I destroyed my marriage in the process. She had completed her GED in prison, earned a certificate in accounting, and was working at a nonprofit that helped domestic abuse survivors manage their finances. Her parole officer had helped her find a studio apartment, and she was paying restitution not just to me, but to 2 other elderly clients she had defrauded before meeting Kevin. The worst part, her letter continued, isn't the prison time or the criminal record or even losing Kevin. The worst part is knowing that I could have had everything I wanted, love, security, family, if I had just been honest about our problems instead of trying to solve them through deception. After reading the letter, I invited Sarah to sit on my patio. She looked different, thinner, older, but also cleaner somehow. The desperate, grasping energy that had always made me uncomfortable was gone. Sarah, why did you come here? Because my therapist says I can't truly move forward until I face what I've done. Not just acknowledge it, but really face it. I stole from you. I manipulated Kevin. I destroyed our family, and I need to look you in the eye and take responsibility for that. We talked for 2 hours. Sarah told me about prison, about the other women she had met who had made similar choices, about the programs that had helped her understand the difference between explanation and excuse. I was scared, she said. Scared of being poor, scared of not being enough for Kevin, scared of losing control. But fear doesn't justify what I did. Nothing justifies what I did. Before she left, I gave Sarah something I had been saving for this moment, a photo from Kevin and Jennifer's wedding showing our whole chosen family together. Sarah, this is what we built after you tried to tear us down. Kevin is happy. He's married to a woman who loves him for who he is, not what he can provide. He's learned to live within his means and find joy in simple things. The Hendersons have a home where their children feel safe and loved. I have a family that chose me, and a garden where I can watch things grow. She studied the photo for a long moment. You could have destroyed Kevin when you discovered what we did. You could have sent him to prison, ruined his life, made him pay forever. Instead, you helped him become better than he was. Sarah, destroying Kevin would have been easy. Building something better took work, but the work was worth it. After Sarah left, I called Kevin to tell him about the visit. He and Jennifer were at their daughter's high school graduation. She had been accepted to Arizona State University and planned to study social work, inspired by watching our family heal from trauma. "Mom," Kevin said, "how do you feel about seeing Sarah again?" "Proud," I said, surprising myself with the honesty of it. Proud. She could have spent the rest of her life blaming other people for her choices. Instead, she's taking responsibility and trying to help other people avoid her mistakes. That takes courage. Do you forgive her? I thought about that question for a long time. Forgiveness wasn't a switch I could flip or a decision I could make once and be done with. It was a process, like grief or healing, that happened in stages and setbacks. "I'm working on it," I said finally. But forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened or pretending it didn't hurt. It's about choosing not to let what she did define the rest of our lives. 6 months later, Kevin and Jennifer bought their first house together. A modest 3-bedroom in a neighborhood of young families, purchased with a conventional mortgage they could easily afford on their combined incomes. They invited me to the housewarming party, where Jennifer's daughter announced her engagement to a young man she had met at college. "Mrs. Parsons," the young man said when Jennifer introduced us, "I've heard so much about you, about how you turned a family crisis into something beautiful." "I didn't do that alone," I told him. "It took everyone choosing to build instead of destroy." The Hendersons were there too, along with their children who had grown from toddlers into school-aged kids who called me Grandma Judy and brought me drawings they made in art class. Jim had retired from the military and was teaching high school history. Maria had started a small business making quilts, many of them for families who had experienced loss or trauma. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, Kevin pulled me aside one more time. "Mom, I have news. Jennifer and I have been talking about adoption. There's a teenager in the foster system, a boy who's been bounced around between homes. His social worker thinks he might be a good fit for our family." Adoption. Adding another child to our chosen family. Another person who needed to learn that love could be trusted and that mistakes didn't have to define a lifetime. "Kevin, that's wonderful. What's his story?" "His name is Marcus. He's 15, been in the system for 3 years after his grandmother died. He's had some behavioral issues, mostly related to trust and abandonment, but his social worker says he's smart and kind underneath the defensive attitude. A 15-year-old boy, abandoned by the world, learning to build walls to protect himself from further hurt." It sounded familiar. "When do we meet him?" "We? Mom, you don't have to—" "Kevin Michael Parsons," I said, using the full name that always meant business. "Do you really think I'm going to let you add a grandchild to this family without being involved in making him feel welcome?" 3 weeks later, I met Marcus in the parking lot of a Denny's restaurant, neutral territory for a first meeting. He was tall and skinny, with intelligent eyes and the kind of defensive posture that screamed, "Don't get too close." "You must be the famous grandmother," he said, shaking my hand with practiced politeness. "I must be. You must be the young man who's thinking about joining our crazy family. They told you I have issues, right? That I don't play well with others?" I smiled. "Marcus, we all have issues in this family. The difference is that we're honest about them and we work together to handle them." Over dinner, Marcus told us about his life. Parents who died in a car accident when he was 12. A grandmother who loved him but couldn't handle his anger and grief. Foster families who saw him as a problem to be managed rather than a child to be loved. "The thing is," he said, picking at his French fries, "I know I'm difficult. I know I push people away before they can leave me, but I don't know how to stop doing it." Kevin leaned forward. "Marcus, I spent most of my adult life making bad decisions because I was angry about things that happened when I was a kid. The difference between us is that you're recognizing the pattern at 15 instead of 40. So what happens now?" Jennifer reached across the table and touched his hand gently. "Now we take it slow. You spend some weekends with us, see how it feels. We spend time getting to know each other. And if everyone thinks it's a good fit, we make it official. And if it doesn't work out, then we figure out what does work out," I said. "Marcus, there's no scenario where you go back to being alone. Whether you live with Kevin and Jennifer or not, you're part of this family now. Family doesn't give up on each other. 2 months later, Marcus moved in with Kevin and Jennifer. 6 months after that, the adoption was finalized. A year after that, he was on the honor roll at his high school and talking about studying engineering in college. But the real measure of his healing came on a Sunday evening when he was helping me plant new flowers in my cottage garden. "Grandma Judy," he said, carefully patting soil around a young rosebush, "can I ask you something? Anything. How do you trust people again after they've hurt you? How do you know who's safe?" I thought about Kevin, about the betrayal that had nearly destroyed us and the healing that had made us stronger. About Sarah, facing her own consequences and trying to build something better from the wreckage of her choices. About the Hendersons, who had trusted strangers with their dream home and gained a chosen family in return. Marcus, I think trust isn't something you give all at once. It's something you build slowly, in small pieces, with people who show you consistently that they're safe. And even then, sometimes people disappoint you. Sometimes they make terrible choices. The question isn't whether you'll ever be hurt again. You will be. The question is whether you'll let fear of being hurt stop you from building something beautiful. He nodded, still patting soil around the rosebush with careful hands. So trust is like gardening? Exactly like gardening. You plant something small, you tend it carefully, you protect it from storms when you can, and you watch it grow. And if something dies, you don't stop planting. You learn from what went wrong and try again. That evening, as I sat on my patio watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple, I thought about the garden we had all planted together. Kevin and Jennifer and Marcus in their modest house, the Hendersons in the home that had once been mine, even Sarah somewhere in Phoenix trying to build a life based on honesty instead of deception. None of it was perfect. Marcus still had bad days when his abandonment fears overwhelmed his progress. Kevin still carried guilt about the man he had been before learning to be the man he wanted to become. The financial stress of adoption and college tuition meant tight budgets and careful planning, but it was real, built on truth instead of deception, on work instead of shortcuts, on forgiveness instead of revenge. My phone buzzed with a text message from Marcus. "Grandma Judy, thank you for teaching me that family is something you choose, not something you're stuck with. Love you." I typed back, "Love you too, sweetheart. See you tomorrow for pancakes." Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities for grace or failure, new chances to choose building over destroying. But tonight, in my cottage garden surrounded by roses that had survived desert heat and winter frost, I was content to rest in the knowledge that some things, once broken, can be rebuilt stronger than they were before. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even with the people who hurt you. Sometimes it's building something so beautiful, so full of love and second chances and chosen family, that even the people who tried to destroy you want to be part of what you've created. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very patient and very kind, you get to watch the seeds you planted in forgiveness bloom into a garden where everyone, even the people who once betrayed you, has a chance to grow into something better than they were before. If you've enjoyed this story of family, betrayal, redemption, and the power of chosen love, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories of human resilience and grace. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love knowing that these stories of healing are reaching people all around the world at all hours of the day and night, bringing hope to anyone who needs to believe that broken things can be made beautiful again. Remember, you are never too old to start over, never too broken to be healed, and never so hurt that you can't choose love instead of revenge. Thank you for letting me share my story with you. Until next time, keep planting seeds of kindness wherever you go.